Today on the Blockchain Report, Bitcoin is creeping up on new all-time highs, the U.S. Senate wants to sanction El Salvador for stacking sats, and the 2025 Bitcoin rich list drops. All this and more on today's show. Let's go! Good morning, my degenerates of the decentralized dream. I'm Hank Hudson, live from San Francisco, where tech bros rebrand as decentralized visionaries, and your Uber driver's white paper has more typos than your Tinder bio. It's Thursday, the day that shows up tired, unshowered, and asking for a raise. Markets are flailing like a first-time trader on leverage, and Congress just held a hearing where someone asked if mining involves actual shovels. Meanwhile, Bitcoin's pumping, meme coins are dumping, and your favorite influencer is suddenly an AI and macro expert because engagement was low on their charts. But before we sift through the carnage of another day in Web3, do your job, hit that like button like it just rugged your liquidity pool, and follow me at Hank at RoxomTV, and of course, RoxomTV, because doom scrolling without commentary is just sad. Now, whether you're watching from your bunker in El Salvador, a San Francisco office that's now a dog yoga studio, or a shipping container full of miners in rural Kentucky, top off your lukewarm coffee, pretend Slack crashed, and let's get into the digital circus that is this crypto's favorite day of the week to pretend that it's still early. But before we do, let's take a peek at what's going on with the numbers in this morning's market rundown. Let's go. All right, it's Thursday and things are looking okay. Right now, Bitcoin hovering beneath the new all-time highs. We just eclipsed yesterday, just barely touching 112K. Now we're back down to a little over 111, waiting for that next breakout. Will it happen during this morning's show? It's possible. We'll find out. Ethereum kind of joining in on the fun, hovering right beneath $2,800. Bitcoin made a big jump, and some of these altcoins, including Ethereum, were definitely riding their tailwinds up into the green. XRP also having a nice moment all the way up to almost $2.44 a coin. Cardano is sitting at about 62, 63 cents, and Dogecoin making its way up near 18 cents a pop. In TradFi, we got the Dow Jones up 0.5% this morning. The NASDAQ sitting right around 20,500. The S&P 5 is around 62, 6,300 this morning. Coinbase is up $2.50. Tesla having a day. They're up 3% this morning. Nvidia is down 0.5%, and GameStop is doing not much, hanging out around $23. We got a lot to cover today, so let's go right into this morning's bull run. Let's do it. All right, so this morning's bull run, it's an exciting one. We are going to be joined right now by our guest of the day. Our guest today, he is one of the sharpest minds in Bitcoin. He's a market analyst, writer, speaker, and educator whose insights have been featured in Forbes, CNBC, Bitcoin Magazine, and much more. He's hosted Swan Signal Live, writes the news block, and advises firms like Mara, Cantilever, and Acropolis. Now, before diving into the Bitcoin game full time, he was helping athletes in the NFL and MLB stay in peak shape. Now he's helping investors do the same, but for their portfolios. Please give a big Blockchain Report welcome to the doctor of decentralized finance himself, Sam Callahan. Sam, welcome to the show. Oh my goodness. We are excited to have you here this morning. How are you doing on this fine Thursday?
What's up, Hank? Thanks for having me on. Quite the intro. Appreciate it.
Oh, well, you know, we like to pump things up in the morning here, and we're certainly appreciative of you joining us this morning. Sam, for those of them out there that might not be familiar with your background, can you give us a little version of how you went from working in physical therapy and pro sports to becoming one of the go-to analysts in the Bitcoin space? What was that journey like?
Yeah, I mean, it was an exciting journey. It's still ongoing. I studied business and then switched majors to biology and physics, and then went down the path of sports physical therapy because I was just interested in helping people. I was interested in learning about the human body. Kind of another complex system similar to the global economy, the human body. And I was interested in learning more about it and helping people. So I went down that route. We ended up, yeah, we ended up doing things like developing algorithms to help prevent injuries from happening in the first place by having objective measures with athletes and then aggregating them and stratifying them with how likely they were to get hurt, which is important for a sports organization. Because if you think about what sells tickets, it's your superstars not getting hurt, it's the team doing well. And so we have to try to keep them on the field. So we tried to just reduce the incidence of those injuries. So I was doing that, and it was great. But then I discovered Bitcoin, and it really just rocked my world right from the beginning. And then I just kept reading and reading, and this was like early 2017, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. Like everybody else who discovers Bitcoin and really looks into it, you kind of get a little obsessive about it. And back then, like I really dove in, started showing proof of work. It's just like literally sharing thoughts, blog posts, research reports. Back then there wasn't that many people doing that. I mean, there's always the OGs before you that I learned from, but at the time compared to today, I mean, it really wasn't as saturated, I guess, with people doing that kind of stuff. And so it allowed me to kind of stand out a little bit. And then I joined Swan as one of the earlier employees. Stayed there for several years as like a lead analyst, senior analyst, head of research role. Left there, started advising a lot of companies. Worked with Lynn Alden on a couple pieces. Joined Battery Finance for a bit, which is a private credit fund. And now I'm transitioning to a new role, which I can't say yet, but I'm excited about it.
Super secret stealth. I like it. I like it. Well, your unique journey honestly seems to be a common thread we get with people on this show. It's like everybody starts off in one forum and then they learn about Bitcoin, and then it just seems to be like a natural hard pivot because they're like, ooh, hard money, the future of finance. This is where I need to be. So while different, yours does strike a similar tone from a lot of other people I've heard too. And we're super excited to have your background and your expertise to chat with us about some of the big stories of the day. You ready to rock?
Let's do it.
Okay, hang tight. We're going to be back with you in a second because first, Bitcoin has officially reached a new all-time high, smashing up to 112,000 K like a wrecking ball through a TradFi conference. Now, on Wednesday, Bitcoin topped out at $112,055, marking an almost 6% price jump over the past week and sending a clear message to the market that the king is back and he's not here for your resistant levels. And the spark behind this moonshot, well, a $200 million liquidation of leveraged short positions. Yeah, a fresh detonation of bad bets near critical resistance. Turns out if you bet against Bitcoin during a supply crunch, you might get wrecked. This milestone pushed total crypto market capitalization back up to $3.4 trillion, a number we haven't seen since June, still shy of the $3.7 trillion record from back in December of 2024. But with Bitcoin carrying the entire sector like Atlas with a hardware wallet, who's worried, right? The rally comes right on the heels of Trump's latest economic diplomacy special, tariffs of up to 40%, on countries including Malaysia, Kazakhstan, South Africa, Myanmar, and Laos. Meanwhile, Japan gets a friendlier 25% slap. The tariffs, though, they take effect next month, and while traditional markets brace for impact, Bitcoin is thriving, bolstered by global demand for hard assets and a growing perception of BTC as a financial fallout shelter. Now, according to Bitfinex analysts, this breakout wasn't driven by hype or hopium. It was built on real capital flows, backed by on-chain accumulation and strong spot buying. Or in other words, this rally seems to have legs. Even Sygnum Bank's head of research is feeling the vibes. She says that Bitcoin has become a legitimate safe haven asset, especially since Trump's Liberation Day executive order back in April. That's when the feds went full orange-pilled and established a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and recently the first U.S. state followed suit. So yeah, the signal is definitely getting louder. Meanwhile, Bitcoin exchange reserves continue to plummet, down 2.99 million BTC as of May 21st, according to Glassnode. That's a steady drop from 3.11 million Bitcoin back in March. Or in other words, investors are pulling their coins off exchanges and holding on tight. That, my friends, is not panic. That is long-term conviction. It's the kind of behavior that leads to a real supply shock, the kind that pushes price upward without mercy. So while shorts are licking their wounds and ETFs are gobbling up coins faster than they're being mined, Bitcoin's climbing higher, cleaner, and stronger than ever. And if this momentum keeps up, 112K might just be the new floor. We're bringing back Sam. Sam, question. Everyone's talking about this 112K milestone, but from your perspective, what does this new all-time high actually signal in terms of long-term market health and Bitcoin's adoption curve?
Well, Hank, I'd push back a little bit because I actually think not a lot of people are talking about it. Outside of the Bitcoin echo chamber, I think this is a really quiet all-time high, which makes me pretty bullish. Given it kind of shows where we are in the cycle from a sentiment standpoint. I still don't think the broader market or retail investors have really keyed into what's going on here. And Bitcoin's sitting at its all-time high, and it shows that there's a lot of room to grow. I think there's a lot of tailwinds right now. I mean, on the show, you probably talked about the regulatory clarity since the Trump administration took office and all the developments that have happened since. It really can't be understated of how important that is for institutions to feel like it's okay to finally allocate to this asset. And now that they have a green light from the banks to the registered investment advisors to pension funds, I mean, we're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars that are going to get allocated into this asset class over time. And I think the market's just kind of waking up to that. And so it takes time for those large institutional investors to actually pull the trigger with these things. I mean, there's investment committees. They have to make sure like where it kind of fits in their allocation buckets, this new alternative asset, if you will, this digital capital. How do we value it? How do we think about position sizing? How does it fit into our overall portfolio? But these conversations are happening. And so I think it's when you look at Bitcoin's price action, it's been a little bit different compared to previous cycles where it's kind of like more orderly. It's kind of like grinding upwards, which is really healthy from if you're thinking about this cycle from a long-term perspective. That's what you want to see. You don't want to see these like speculative blow-off tops and then a crash down. Right now, we're seeing kind of the opposite, where it's kind of grinding upwards, which shows that maybe the investor base has changed, which makes sense given what I just mentioned. And it shows that this cycle probably has a lot of legs left in it.
Love to hear that. And you make some good points, Sam. Why do you feel like it is we just breached a new all-time high, even though it was just like a little bit bigger than our previous one? But I remember last cycle, we had 69K. It felt like the whole world was talking about Bitcoin. But to your point, it seems like really it's only being discussed within the community here, even though we've seen this huge influx of institutional money, corporate money. BlackRock is all piling in. Is it maybe because the retail traders are maybe sitting on the sidelines a little more? Are they kind of the people that spark a lot of the news cycles? When retail gets involved, everybody talks about it. Like, why do you think we're not hearing more about this right now?
I mean, to put it simply, I just think that the price needs to be higher, I guess, for these retail investors to get excited about it. From a sentiment standpoint, you see that in like Google search results. It's just not there yet. People aren't searching for Bitcoin. And I think this is in part when you're coming out of a bear market, and 2022 was pretty tumultuous. There was a lot of big headlines, a lot of blowups. We had that credit contagion, and I think there's a lot of people that were turned off by it. The FTX collapse. In a lot of ways, there's a lot of reputational damage that occurred. And if you're just a normal retail investor, it just seems really risky, especially if you conflate Bitcoin with the rest of the cryptocurrency space, which I consider to be extremely different value propositions from a risk standpoint, as well as just a technology standpoint. And so, I think it's an education thing. And I think it's actually people just kind of coming back to it after all this and being like, whoa, Bitcoin's back at an all-time high. I thought it kind of blew up with FTX and all these things, which, as we know, it's probably the wrong way to think about it. But at the same time, it kind of takes people, another touch point to come back to it, to say, okay, I'm actually going to take a little deeper dive into this, because why has it resurfaced? Why does it seem like it's gaining strength when I thought it had died a couple of years ago, And so I think it's just a time and education thing when it really comes down to it.
Yeah, education certainly seems to be a big part of it. And you mentioned maybe you think like the number isn't big enough or eye-catching enough for retail right now. Like, is there a number you think that people need to actually see in order to get retail back on the bandwagon? Or maybe do we need a really big move like Trump coming out and say, hey, we're actively buying Bitcoin for the United States? Is there some kind of event or number that you're expecting maybe to be the next catalyst for retail to get back in the saddle?
Well, that would certainly help if the government
Yeah.
came out and said we're going to figure out ways to accumulate Bitcoin. I mean, that would be headline news for sure. Where that number is, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, right now I look at it and I'm just kind of pinching myself. I'm like, Bitcoin's at 112K. That's exciting.
Yeah.
But maybe it's higher for people to really get it. Maybe it's 200K. Maybe it's 500K. Maybe it's these like round number milestones that'll get the masses in. I don't really know exactly what will.
Yeah.
Bitcoin just
Yeah.
keeps trucking along. I mean, it's been, the best performing asset again. And now, as you mentioned in earlier in the show, it's kind of showing characteristics of a safe haven asset, which if you're a Bitcoiner, you kind of always had that mindset that Bitcoin is actually quite
Yeah.
safe when you understand it. But now that the market's kind of recognizing that in the face of these rising geopolitical tensions and the fiscal situation of all these countries, you really coming at the forefront, and the risk of currency debasement rising, you really are seeing Bitcoin kind of behave more like a safe haven, which is extremely bullish, I believe. And it's something BlackRock has mentioned. It's something that Bitcoin's price action is indicating, specifically over the last 6 months or so.
Yeah, agreed. It's a funny time we're in right now because, like you said, we're at $112,000 nearly for Bitcoin, a number that I don't know, a lot of people probably thought we might never see. Yet I wonder if a number that big, we're in 6 digits now. Do you think there's a psychological element that maybe it's like retail that's uninformed and hasn't educated themselves yet is like, oh, it's too expensive now. I've missed the boat. I mean, of course, you and I know you can buy Bitcoin down to the 8th decimal. But do you think that number is so big now where it's like, it's flipped the script a little, where it was retail before and corporations were staying on the sideline? For corporations, they see it and they have the money to buy it, at 100, they can buy whatever as much as they want, but retail is seeing this number and saying, oh, I've missed the boat. Do you think that plays into any of this at all, and maybe why retail is kind of staying out of it right now?
I mean, I don't know it's why they are broadly staying out of it, but it is something that I think people suffer from is unit bias, right? They think they've missed it. They
Right.
think they can't own a lot. So then they go into a lot riskier cryptocurrencies that seem like, quote unquote, the next Bitcoin when it's not. Right. And it's because they can own like 100,000 of these tokens instead of point whatever Bitcoin. And it's why, there's been a move to denominate it in sats to make to address that unit bias, because obviously it's all about percentage term. You want a small percentage of the hardest asset the world has ever seen, as opposed to a larger percentage of some token that's not going to be around in a couple years, really, because it's a kind of a fallacy of thinking. It's not. I would highly advise people to do that work, because like you want one share of Apple as opposed to a million shares of some computer company that does nothing, that you don't know what it's going to do, and you can't even trust the founding team, right? So it's all about flipping your thinking a little bit about that stuff. With Bitcoin, it really is, we're so early, which is kind of part of what I'm talking about in terms of the education. And so that's
Right.
also that thinking is kind of a function of, oh, I've missed the boat already. There's so many people that come to Bitcoin and feel that they've missed the boat. I mean, I felt that way in 2017. People said they felt that way in 2013 and 2011. Everyone feels late. But in reality, when you consider how little of the total capital has actually been allocated to it, we are seriously early to where this thing could go. And so it's actually also kind of shows that you haven't fully grasped the opportunity in front of you. If you think that you're too late and that, 0.1 Bitcoin or whatever less than that is not a lot of Bitcoin, then you haven't really fully internalized what Bitcoin is and where it could go from here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you think about, they say there's like 300 million or so Bitcoiners right now in a world of 8 billion. So it's like 1/24 of the world is really even involved right now. So like, yeah, we very much are early. And it kind of makes me wish that, similar to when stock prices become too high and they'll do a stock split to make it like more palatable to the
Exactly.
John Q public. I almost wish there was something like that for Bitcoin, so people would be like, "Oh, Bitcoin is affordable again." Like, no, it's still always been affordable. It's just you're not educated in what's going on here. So no,
Well, you
I
see it with
definitely am
the
on board
treasury
with your
companies a
thoughts
little
on
bit,
that.
right? So they do stock splits. Now they do it to get some more liquidity for their equity. That's one part of it. But I think another part of it is for what you're saying. It's a unit bias. You're addressing that a little bit so that the retail investor feels like they have more shares. I mean, which also helps the liquidity if you have more retail demand. So I agree, the stock
Right.
split. I mean, it'd be nice if we could do something like that with Bitcoin, but it's all good, man. Like that's what
Yeah.
the denominated in sats can be a superpower if
Yeah.
you let your mind go there.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I actually told this story. I forget who we were talking to a few days ago. I had a buddy who I was talking to, I was on a golf trip with him, and he was telling me last Christmas, he's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy everyone in my family some Bitcoin. They'll love it. And then he was like looking how much it would cost, and it was just like, these infinitesimal like decimal points or whatever. So he's like, instead, I bought them all a bunch of Litecoins. So now all of his family's like stuck with Litecoin because
Yeah.
they were like, he's like, they don't want a fraction of a Bitcoin. I'll give them a bunch of Litecoins. But we'll
Yeah,
see how
and
that's going to
I
play
don't
out.
I don't really understand the mindset because it's just like I don't know, if you wanted to give him gold, you wouldn't like turn around just because you could give him like a bucket of some other worthless rock. You wouldn't give him buckets of that. You would give
Here's
him
a
a
bunch
little
of
bit of gold.
crystals.
Yeah, like here's a bunch of fool's gold. But I got you 10 buckets of it instead of like, a nice gold coin. Like I just don't get it.
Right. Yeah, I guess perception and presentation for that kind of things is important. But, you get educated. I'd much rather take the Bitcoin, I think. Sam, so going back to the story here, right now we're seeing exchange reserves hitting some really historic lows. Do you think that we're witnessing the early stages of what could be considered a true supply shock right now? And if so, what are the macro implications of that?
Well, when you break down Bitcoin, it really is just a function of demand and supply, and you have an absolute fixed supply, right? And so that's like the underlying thesis of Bitcoin. If you're going to drive it down to its simplest, point, it's just a fixed supply with more demand. And if you're bullish on Bitcoin's adoption, there's only one way for the price to go. And so the supply shock is something that's been talked about a lot, but the exchange metric as well. There's a lot of assumptions made with that. You don't really know what the exchanges are doing if they're moving it to another wallet or address. And so I don't really like looking at that metric specifically. But the supply shock, I mean, it's very there. I mean, like, so you just have demand from corporations now, you have nation states, you have financial advisors, and there's just not that much Bitcoin. Now people are like, how is the price still here when you have all these developments? I mean, it's pretty simple. There's sellers in the market, right? So it's probably some OGs, it's probably some people who this is what their price level was. They think it's fair that they're selling their Bitcoin right now. Now, eventually that'll get exhausted. And that's kind of what we're seeing. It's consolidation right below an all-time high, kind of in this range of 100 to 110,000. You're just seeing kind of chop up and down. And it's actually what you kind of want to see. You're seeing some selling pressure, and that's fine. Coins are being distributed to people who feel like this is a good spot to buy Bitcoin. And it's kind of like a coiled spring is what I've heard the last couple days. And it does certainly feel that way. Because like I said, you kind of want to see this healthy consolidation when you're thinking about where we are in the bull cycle as opposed to some kind of frothy speculative blow off top. And so it shows that there's some, staying power here when you have these levels where you see a lot of coins exchanged back and forth. And so this is one of those levels right now. And you got this big kind of wall right around the all-time high of 110 to 112. And once we break through that, we're into price discovery. And so, from a supply shock standpoint, I think the supply shock is just more broad. Like I just kind of think about it from a more long-term standpoint, how little Bitcoin there is and how much demand there is, potential demand for it, because every single person suffers from currency debasement. and Bitcoin is the best way to store your wealth over the long term. And so from a supply shock standpoint, like that's the supply shock, these short-term things of exchanges and, causing the price to go up to 120 to 125. Like it's more about broadly, there is only 21 million Bitcoin and there is so much demand for this technology, this new digital capital, when you really peer out to how much misallocation of capital has happened into these other asset classes, because the money is broken, because the money is debased and can't hold its value. And so we're in the very, very early stages of this demonetization of other asset classes into the best form of digital capital and the best way to store your value over long periods of time. And that's Bitcoin. And so that's the supply shock. And that's like, we are very early in that. And it's why there's such a huge opportunity ahead of us.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And you also mentioned at the point we're at during this current bull cycle, this particular like halving cycle that we're in, bull cycle, seems to be quite different than ones we've experienced in the past. Do you feel like with all of these corporate treasury companies, institutional adoption, we got BlackRock buying up all the Bitcoin that it can, are we going to experience these halving and bull and bear market cycles the same way that we did previously? Or do you think that Bitcoin as an asset is kind of maturing out of that the cycles that we'd seen previously into kind of something else entirely? Because it feels different right now. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, it really does. I mean, the market's matured, the market's shifted. Like I said, there's a brand new investor base. So it's I believe that the 4-year cycle isn't going to continue. I don't think anything's ever that simple. I think, the 3 greens, 1 red pattern that's happened with these past cycles. I mean, if it continues, it'll be the easiest way to trade anything ever. Like you just three green, short on red, 3 green, short on red. Okay. But I just don't really see that happening because, like I said, I think we're going to see dampened volatility, probably to the upside and the downside because of a lot of this institutional money and Wall Street kind of coming in here. And that's just natural with the maturation of the asset classes. There's all these different investment vehicles now and ways to get exposure and derivatives, which just adds liquidity into the market and, again, kind of leads to dampened volatility. And so I think we are in a kind of different phase of Bitcoin. It just feels like it's kind of matured into its teenage years, and so I think it's likely to last a little bit longer is how I envision the cycle going. You couple that with like the structural tailwinds that I talked about, from a regulatory standpoint, from a geopolitical standpoint, like macro. It's just, there's a lot of things going for Bitcoin right now. And it's hard to see how, that's going to stop abruptly after 2 years, unless we do just get some like insane blow off top again, which is also possible, due to excessive leverage, which, is also possible. It's just kind of a human nature thing of people misusing leverage at the top of bull markets, and then that causing some kind of large drawdown. I personally believe that it's not going to be as deep as prior cycles. But I guess that's just a function of how crazy and how much leverage gets put into the system. So, I'm open to all possibilities. It's just my base case is that this is going to be a little bit longer, a little bit more dampened volatility compared to previous ones.
Yeah, I think we're kind of getting what we all have been asking for a long time, right? Is when is Bitcoin going to finally mature to that point where we're not going to see these gigantic 30% swings all the time? And while that's kind of been par for the course during most of Bitcoin's history, at least the last 2 months have felt really stable. I mean, I think if you compare it to like the NASDAQ or S&P, I think it's actually been a little less volatile this year. So yeah. We'll see. Yeah. I like the way we're heading. I mean, the guardrails are in place now, right? So, or they're getting there.
Yeah, volatility is a good thing too. I think Bitcoin's always going to be volatile. It's just a function of having a fixed supply. But maybe we'll just see a little bit less than what we were used to, which is like extreme volatility, right? But
Right,
yeah, I
right.
love volatility when it's going up over
Great
long
for
periods of
trading.
time. Like everyone should like volatility. Nobody likes just flatness, deadness, staticness. That's not fun.
Right. Volatility is fine when when you look back at the charts, it's always up and to the right. Like it's really easy to trade if that's what the ultimate end game is
Yeah,
going to be
embrace
for it,
it.
right? You're like, well, it might go up, it go down. So yeah, cool. Hang 10. Sam, we're going to come right back to you because in our next story, the U.S. Senate Democrats want to investigate El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele over his government's use of Bitcoin, of course. And he responded on X by posting the quote, ha ha ha, ha ha ha, ha ha ha. The Dems are just salty. He wrote that on X, his words, not mine. That tweet was aimed at the senators behind the El Salvador Accountability Act of 2025. The bill calls for a full-blown probe into El Salvador's Bitcoin strategy, claiming it may be a front for regime corruption. It even includes potential sanctions, asset freezes, visa bans, the whole geopolitical breakup package. But Bukele, who's basically the Bitcoin meme lord of Latin America, is having none of it. He's made mocking foreign governments an art form. Whether it's the IMF or Venezuela, if you question Bukele's Bitcoin moves, you're getting quote tweeted with a laughing emoji. Bukele's also been cozying up to Donald Trump, whose administration has controversially used El Salvador's mega prison to house deportees. Naturally, the bromance didn't go unnoticed in D.C., where Democrats are now pushing for a full assessment of whether El Salvador is helping other nations dodge sanctions via crypto. Now, in case you forgot, El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender back in 2021, right alongside the US dollar. And for a while, businesses had to accept Bitcoin as long as they had the tech. That part's since been dialed back, but Bukele has kept on stacking. Today, he's got receipts, literally, and we're going to check them out. Can we bring up our Bitcoin treasuries box, guys? Let's take a peek here. Yeah, and we got Sam back for this one. So, guys, Sam, I'm sure you're familiar with this site. This is BitcoinTreasuries.com, where you can check out, all the biggest Bitcoin holders in the world. And I believe they recently added governments as well. So we're taking a peek at that right now. Let's see. So El Salvador currently has over 6,200 Bitcoin, worth about $690 million at today's prices. We know El Salvador has been on the kick of accumulating Bitcoin, Sam. What do you think it's going to take for other or more countries, I should say, to follow suit and start actively putting it on their balance sheets? Are they all just waiting for the U.S. to make that move to kind of have permission for themselves, or what do you think what the catalyst is going to be?
I mean, I think the catalyst already happened with the strategic reserve. It's pretty monumental. I don't know if they just need I don't think anybody's waiting for the U.S. to begin stacking in order to do it. I think already the gun is fired and the race is on, and every single government has been put on notice with the creation of the strategic Bitcoin reserve in the United States. That they need to figure out their own policy around Bitcoin. El Salvador was the first to do it, and so props to them. I mean, it took courage and leadership to do that. I think the bill or whatever the from the United States, like the Democrats or the senators, is absolutely ridiculous. It reminds me of in 2022 a similar one. I think it was the Accountability for Cryptocurrency in El Salvador Act, the ACES Act, was written, and who was on that was Bob Menendez, who they were talking about how it's bad for the country and it leads to criminal activity and problems with cybersecurity and economic stability. And here we are, one of the writers. I think he just went to federal prison like a couple weeks ago for bribery charges for gold bars. So that's who used to be on this bill, but now it's somebody else. And so I think it's absolutely absurd because El Salvador has about $400 billion in unrealized profits from their Bitcoin, strategy. So it's done pretty well for their economic stability. From a cybersecurity standpoint, Bitcoin's the most secure protocol in the world. And honestly, there's been recent developments with more centralized systems. Like there was a large hack in Latin America. I think I think in Brazil. So there's this software
Hmm.
company that connects banks to the central bank, and some employee was bribed, and they gave access to the system, and then they stole like $140 million. And really, that just
Okay.
shows the problems with centralized systems. So from a cybersecurity standpoint, is it also doesn't make any sense. If somebody adopts Bitcoin, they're actually probably improving their security on that front. And then I just don't think it's in the business of the United States to tell any other sovereign country what to do policy wise. You're actually impeding on the democratic governance of that nation. So they can do whatever they want. And so I disagree full heartedly with any bill that tells another nation what to do. Um, they're saying that it's going to evade sanctions, but really, I think this is about just El Salvador embracing a non-sovereign form of money that is doing wonders in terms of their country's growth and their balance sheet. I mean, it's been phenomenal for them.
And it begs the question, with all of this pro Bitcoin, pro crypto legislation we've seen here in America recently, is it surprising to you that the US is trying to sanction a sitting president of another country over his Bitcoin policy? Like, what kind of precedent does that set internationally?
I mean, yes, it's surprising. I mean, it just goes back to what I was just saying. It's surprising because I just don't think it's any of these policymakers' business, U.S. policymakers' business to even write a bill like this. I don't think it's based in
Yeah, I
fact.
don't get it.
I think unfortunately, given the stance of the previous administration towards the broader digital asset industry, in contrast to how this administration has embraced it, it has become a little bit more politically charged of a topic, even though it doesn't have to be.
Hmm.
Bitcoin is a neutral technology. It makes no sense for it to be politicized. It benefits both sides of the aisle, um, for different ways. It adheres to the values of both, the Democrat side and the Republican side. That's the beauty of Bitcoin. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, it has become a little bit more politically charged just because of the difference in how they've approached the industry. And now they're not just attacking developments in the US, but they're reaching out and saying you can't do this to another sovereign country. When again, if they were down 400, you know, 400 million or billion, mixing up which one it is, but if they were down a substantial amount on their Bitcoin holdings, maybe they would have more of a case, but they're actually like incredibly in profit. So the whole
Yeah,
thing just
stop
makes
doing
no
this thing
sense to
that's
me.
making your country so much money. How dare you?
Yeah, stop doing
It's
this thing
insane.
that's making your country wealthy and more prosperous. Stop that.
Yeah, I mean, and what's funny is like Bukele seems pretty unfazed by this recent pressure from the United States. Do you think that this kind of, let's call it political defiance, does that embolden other countries to follow suit? Or does it raise legitimate concerns about crypto's use in dodging sanctions?
Look, I don't think that like I don't think the allegations are really founded for Bukele specifically, and I think he's just acting on behalf of his citizenry as a sovereign nation. Like I don't, you know, you could say he's standing in defiance of what, you know, another a larger,
I
powerful
guess the United
country.
States?
Like
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
he's
we're
just
we're
he's
often
just
tasked as being kind of the police of the world, right? I mean, that's probably not fair that we do
right. But I
that,
mean,
but
like honestly, I just he's just doing what he thinks is right for his people. And I think it's interesting because, as we know from an individual level, when you adopt Bitcoin, you become more like sovereign, right? And so maybe he's feeling a little bit empowered by Bitcoin. That's what Bitcoin does. It empowers individuals, corporations, and countries. Um, and so
yeah.
maybe he's feeling that a little bit. But I don't think the sanctions thing is like, look, I don't agree if any kind of form of money is funding terrorism or illegal activity, but it's not the asset itself that should be criticized. It's so silly to me. Like if there's terrorist activity and the authorities cracked down on it and they were exchanging diamonds from between one another, you're not just saying like, oh, we gotta shut down diamonds. No, you should
Those
you should
diamonds.
those thing diamonds. Let's cancel them all. Let's stop the diamonds. No, you just you criticize the activity that's being perpetrated by that tool or monetary good, but you don't attack the monetary good
Yeah.
itself. It just makes no sense. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree with you. I mean, Bukele was just glad handing Trump in the Oval Office it was like 2 months ago or something, and now they're delivering sanctions on them. I don't get it. I don't think either of us really agree with it. However, the U.S. is sanctioning someone else that I do want to talk to you about because I think we're both going to probably agree with this one. As North Korea has apparently decided that hacking crypto exchanges is so 2023 and impersonating American IT workers is the new hotness. According to the U.S. Treasury Department, the DPRK has shifted from smash and grab cyber attacks to long-term corporate cosplay. The Treasury sanctioned 2 individuals, including North Korean national Song Kum-hyok, for stealing U.S. citizens' identities and handing them off to North Korean operatives posing as freelance tech bros. They also sanctioned Russian national Gak Astarian, who apparently ran a side hustle employing dozens of North Korean IT workers under long-term contracts with DPRK trading firms. Because nothing says trustworthy development partner quite like hiring directly from North Korean missile fund payroll. Now, this isn't a small crew either, gang. The OFAC says thousands of North Korean tech workers have been deployed around the world, especially in China and Russia, to quietly blend in with Western companies, collect paychecks, and funnel crypto earnings straight into Pyongyang's ballistic missile program. So yes, your friendly remote React developer might actually be funding intercontinental ballistic missiles. Great. Now, TRM Labs, a blockchain intelligence firm, said on Tuesday that North Korea is shifting tactics. Instead of big splashy exchange hacks, which they're still doing, by the way, they're now leaning into deception-based strategies. That means fake resumes, stolen identities, and job interviews on Zoom with someone named Brian who's somehow wearing a suit and speaking perfect English from a North Korean IP address. And, well, it's working. TRM Labs estimates that North Korean linked actors are responsible for $1.6 billion of the $2.1 billion in stolen crypto so far in 2025. That's 76% of all crypto thefts this year. So call it what you want, a hostile takeover of the Web3 workforce sounds about right. Meanwhile, U.S. authorities have been busy playing whack-a-mole. In June alone, they charged 4 North Korean nationals for wire fraud and money laundering and tried to seize over $7.7 million in crypto earnings allegedly made by North Korean contractors pretending to be remote blockchain devs in the U.S. and Serbia. The sanctions mean that any asset in the U.S. tied to these individuals or 4 sanctioned Russian entities are now frozen, and any business dealings with them are criminal offenses. So if your new back-end guy on Upwork has a suspiciously vague LinkedIn and insists on being paid in Monero and has a GitHub profile that starts with Kim Jong Dev, you might want to audit that smart contract. And hard. We're bringing back Sam. Sam, North Korea's pivot from blunt force hacks to stealth workforce infiltration is wild. What does this shift say about the maturing attack surface in crypto? Are you worried about this at all? Are you getting concerned?
Look, I just think that the more valuable it becomes, the greater the attack surface is, and you just have to be careful about your own security. But honestly, it's like criminals do criminal things. And I think like, I don't know if there's a pivot. I bet this was going on even beforehand too. But like, they're using all the tools available to perform criminal activity. It's what criminals do. And, I don't think this is specific to the digital asset industry at all, right? They're doing criminal activity everywhere. And so, the other thing I'd say is just like most of these hacks and these things, they were on smart contracts or bridges, and they were huge, right? Because those are less secure, and they found the vulnerabilities and got the cryptocurrencies from those. And what's interesting is like, that's where the risk is. And so that's what you should be aware of. If you're dabbling in these, DeFi protocols or these smart contracts, and that's where all of these hacks have occurred. And so if I'm worried about, the security or the attack surface, that's where the attacks have occurred. So I'd be careful there if you're dabbling. But, these are just criminals doing criminal things. And I don't,
Yeah.
it's not like shocking. It's not like I'm just like, okay, yeah, there's bad people in North Korea and that they'll steal things. It's kind of the nature of the world.
Yeah, criminals are going to criminal, and there's always going to be new tech and new methods for phishing or whatever new schemes come up with the tech itself. So
it's very
I think you're
sophisticated.
right. This is just par for the course. Yeah, I mean, we've seen it in every emerging tech ever. I remember like Catch Me If You Can, these whitewashing checks, and then you got credit card skimmers. Like there's always going to be something. So this
literally,
is just
it's
the
everywhere.
next thing.
I think it's just being aware that they're becoming more sophisticated, and I mean with AI tools as well, like mimicking voices. You got to be careful and just be on alert. I mean, this is not just digital assets. This is in general, phishing attacks and online. Especially elderly people who aren't as aware of what's going on here. I mean, it's really unfortunate when you see these things. I just read about an entire elder fraud ring. That leader finally got caught, but it wasn't before he stole like hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So I think it's just about educating your family members, getting a safe word amongst yourselves and just being aware that these things exist to protect yourself and your loved ones.
Yeah, as you said earlier in the show, I think with Bitcoin and crypto in general, we're seeing it's all about education. The more you educate yourself, the less vulnerable you are to these types of things, and the more likely you are to find success in this new and emerging financial system. So couldn't agree with you more. Sam, I don't know about you, my friend, but I need a quick break. So we're going to go to break, but we're going to be back with Sam Callahan and more right after this. Stay tuned. All right, it's 9 o'clock on this Thursday. Bitcoin sitting around 111,400. We're back here with Sam Callahan for our deep dive. Sam, I want to switch it up a little. We were talking stories, but now I want to talk about you. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Rock and roll. So, the question I always like to ask, we touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to get a little bit more in depth. As you said, you kind of got into the Bitcoin space around, I think you said 2017-ish. Mm-hmm. Walk me through, what was your first encounter with Bitcoin like? Was it love at first sight, or was it a slow burn? You had to educate yourself and then you got into the space. How did that work for you?
It was actually kind of love at first sight, to be honest with you. I came across an article. It's really random, honestly. I just came across an article. I mean, it was like some silly MSN or Yahoo like article, just like talking about Bitcoin's price. But then like it had a sentence about Satoshi Nakamoto, and I was like, what's going on there? That's so weird. So then I started reading about Satoshi, and I was like, I can't believe nobody knows who created this thing. And then I immediately just bought some books on it because that's just what I do. And I actually read Digital Gold by Nathaniel Popper, and I think that's a great book. He's kind of turned on Bitcoin a little bit, but that doesn't mean the book's not great. And so it definitely helped orange pill me. And after I read that book, I just kind of like fell in love with it immediately. And then, I understood like there was a lot to learn, and there still is with Bitcoin. Like, I don't think you ever fully understand it. But I really just took the time to read and read and read everything I could before I started to speak on it publicly. I think I would probably recommend people do that, is just have some respect for the people that came before you and just, sit back and listen and learn and learn and learn and educate yourself. And don't be the guy who comes in and says like, I discovered Bitcoin and I'm here to fix it. Because you'll find that most of the topics and discussions and conversations were talked about on the Bitcoin Talk forums in like 2012. It's kind of incredible. So that's what I did. I took like years and I just tried to read everything I could on it. And then once I felt like, okay, I can at least like speak on this pretty good. I can explain it pretty well to my friends and family. Then I started to kind of post about it and share my thoughts on things. And then that's kind of how I started to get on the radar of some people in the industry. And then I went to meetups. I just got completely enthralled with it and got involved with the community, local meetups. It was during the bear market, so the meetups weren't as well attended then, like 2018,
I bet.
2019. But it was fun because you got to meet people who are kind of like die hard. Because if the price is down 80% and they're still going to Bitcoin meetups, you know that they're kind of in it for the right reasons. And so I was really attracted to
Yeah.
Bitcoin as a force for good, for freedom, for human rights, and to protect against debasement, which I thought was a really insidious um, policy choice, you could say. And so I
Mhm.
was just all in at that point from a moral standpoint, as well as I just saw it as a really
Yeah.
good economic like investment opportunity.
Sure. And I like that you're saying people should do their research before actually speaking on it. I know there's some people in the industry, Scottie Pippen, that could really benefit from doing that. He's always posting insane things. I love him though. I'm a Chicago guy.
No, it's just like
So you
it
went
worked
from
for me. Everyone. There's probably geniuses out there who read it for like 2 weeks and then maybe understand it really well. Who knows? I just think it's like a wise
yeah.
thing to do. It's just sit back and then, another thing is just learning who who is providing the signal is really important. So understanding who you're
Sure.
learning from, and that just kind of takes time to understand who is balanced, who is providing a lot of great content and education, and because those are the people that kind of shape your thoughts. And so to me, it just takes time to kind of learn who those people are and who maybe aren't, to help kind
Yeah.
of guide your own knowledge journey around Bitcoin.
Who are you finding gives you the best signal? Who do you look to for information in the space today?
Well, I mean, there's so many now. There's so many. That's one of the things that keep you interested in Bitcoin is the community. I think is just full of very, very special people. And so, I mean, the
Hmm.
list is very long now for me. But some that come immediately to mind are people that I call like friends and mentors now, which are Lynn Alden is one of them
That's
for
pretty cool.
sure. Um, I had the privilege to work with her a little bit, but I think Lynn has always just been so spot on with a lot of her commentary and market insights over the past several years. Um, Preston Pish is one, Jeff Booth.
Yeah.
Um, um, I've always liked Alex Gladstein's perspective, given his,
Okay.
human rights angle. I think it's a really important message to get across. Um, Ross Stevens, obviously Sailor. Like I learned from a lot of people. A lot of people who have a lot of experience in markets and running businesses and investing, and coming at Bitcoin with a sense of humility and learning from these people. I mean, that's the best thing you can do. It's one of the most powerful things you can do, um,
Yeah.
because that's what this is. It's like the community is like plugging into the community. It's one of the most asymmetric things you could do for your life. Bitcoin obviously is a big part of it from an economic standpoint. The returns that you'll get, but the returns you'll get socially and intellectually by plugging into the community, it's infinite. So that's what I recommend to people.
Yeah. No, those are all great names. We actually had Preston, I think, on the show. I think it was last week. He was great. And you yourself have become a really recognizable voice in the space now. What was like your first opportunity to speak publicly on Bitcoin? How did that come about? Was that a result of you doing your research and then publishing online? And then someone's like, hey, Sam knows what he's talking
Yeah.
about. Let's get him up on stage. Or how did that work?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly how it happened, honestly. Um, I don't know about the first one, but like Preston's a great example. Like Preston, is somebody I had been listening to for a long time and who I just learned to respect. I was just a fan of his podcast. I was just a listener. and I thought
Yeah.
he was great educator, great at explaining things, and his track record was very great. And so I was a big fan of Preston's, and then I started putting out some content on X or Twitter at the time, and I put out a few threads, and then Preston asked me to come on the show. So that was one of the early ones, and I had to pinch myself because I was like,
That's
"Wow, I
amazing.
can't believe I'm going on Preston's show," because I had been listening to it for years and years and years, and then that became the first of the many times I've been on his shows now. I don't know how many times I've been on his show, but he's a friend now. I really consider Preston a friend and a mentor. And that's just the kind of things you get when you put yourself out there and show your work. And that's really, you kind of create your own opportunities by doing that. And so that was
Yeah.
one of the earlier ones that come to mind. And even I remember even one of the other things was you kind of remember the first big name that follows you.
You never
And I
forget
just
your
remember
first.
Jeff Booth following me when I had like 150 followers. I was just like,
Oh, nice.
Jeff Booth follow? Because I said like, oh, I love Jeff Booth's book, Price It Tomorrow. I think it's one of the best ones to share with somebody who's just getting into Bitcoin because it talks about the
Hmm.
problem a lot, and I just think it's a really great read. And so I said something like that on X, and then Jeff followed me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, Jeff Booth followed me!" And now, I also kind of consider him a close friend. So it's just kind of funny. You kind of remember the first one, and so Jeff followed me before almost everyone, and so I always appreciated that.
Yeah, and I love to hear that you say you're like, I was surprised that Preston wanted me on his show and that I got this follow from Jeff Booth, but like your writing at the news block has developed a pretty strong following of itself, right? And it makes me wonder, like, as someone who's putting content out there, what kinds of stories do you find yourself prioritizing to cover, and why? What are the things that you kind of gravitate to in the Bitcoin space right now?
Um, I just, I try to share the stories that I think are meaningful and important to Bitcoin's adoption. That's what whether it's a negative story or a positive story, that's always what I've tried to share with the world. It's like, okay, I think this is important. I think this isn't important. And also trying to dispel myths, misconceptions. Um, I like highlighting kind of the problems with the current system and how Bitcoin kind of fixes things.
Hmm.
And so I always try to be constructive as well and positive as much as I can. And that's something I've learned over the years is just it's better to be pro Bitcoin than anti something else.
Yeah.
Because you gotta focus on the solution, but it's important to kind of highlight some of the problems to kind of set the tone and set the environment so that people can understand why it is the solution. And so, when I'm
Yeah.
picking through stories and there's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of like headline grabbing stories, and I've always tried to steer away from that. I've always tried to steer away from kind of the short-term dopamine hits that you could provide, especially when you get a platform. Maybe it's hurt
Hmm.
my growth, because I think if I said like Bitcoin's going to $1 million because of this, it gets a lot of likes, but I've always steered away from that and tried to provide more balanced, nuanced analysis. And it's more just like having a long term view. Like I want to provide value. And I think that kind of resonates with people over time. Whereas, again, you can get a lot of followers by posting hopium and kind of grabbing
Right.
onto these headlines. But I think over the long term, you build a reputation if you just kind of are more honest and balanced. And that's something I try to do from the get go. And, I think
Yeah.
it's kind of served me well.
Well, I think it's yeah, no, definitely. It's not like I hear you reporting like Kim Kardashian paid in Bitcoin for her Brazilian butt lift or something crazy. Like you're sticking
Yeah.
with
Like, no, I don't.
constructive stuff that keeps you like credible in the space. And your words certainly carry weight, and it shows. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're an advisor to what is it? I think Mara, Cantilever, Acropolis, right? Like, how do you help these organizations navigate Bitcoin's strategic integration into their own like financial systems as we kind of head into
Yeah.
this new frontier?
Well, the other one's Liquid recently. So I'm on the advisory board of Liquid,
Okay.
which is a Canadian Lightning treasury company, which I'm excited about. So that's kind of a newer one. Um,
That
each
is,
of them are
yeah.
different. Each of them brought me on for different reasons. Really what it's about is just answering their questions, kind of advising them what's going on in the market, what's going on in the macro picture. You know, given my previous roles and just what I'm good at, it's just I've always kind of had my finger on the pulse of the market, where the industry's going. And so it could be anything from jumping on calls with the leadership team or to answering emails, answering questions, supporting them in any way I can from a strategy standpoint, and just sharing my knowledge and thoughts, connecting them with people in the industry that I think would be accretive to their own goals. But each one's very different. Each one's at a very different stage in the company. Obviously Mara is like an established public company, largest miner. Others are smaller startups. Others are a public company. One's a venture capital fund. So each role is a little bit different, but it's kind of what I wanted to do because I just like to support people that are building in the space, and I like thinking about different aspects of the space. So whether it's Liquid, what they're doing with the Lightning infrastructure and the treasury, and whether it's Mara with mining as well as their treasury operations, whether it's Cantilever, which is supporting builders and Bitcoin builders, and then Acropolis, which is developing kind of custody solutions. Like I always wanted to be tuned into different aspects of the Bitcoin ecosystem, and so that's what these advisory roles allow me to do. So I've really enjoyed all of them. It's been great.
Amazing. Well, I know your time is limited this morning, Sam, so unfortunately we're going to let you go, but I'm sure you got a lot of things to take care of. I want to really say thank you for your time this morning, your expertise and your knowledge. We really have had a great time having you on the show. But before we let you go, I'm sure there's a huge contingent of our audience that's like, hey, Sam sounds like a credible voice in this space that I need to start listening to more. Where can I send them to get more information on you and all of your articles and publishings that you're doing out there? People want to know.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm on X. I mean, that's where the community lives still. I'm on Nostr too, but primarily I'm still on X, which is at Sam Calla, SamCallallah. You can find some of my previous stuff throughout there, but also, the last two articles I've done have been with Lynn. So you can find that on Lynn Alden's website, which was one on fiscal dominance and the other on global liquidity. And so that's probably about two of my latest ones that you could go if you're interested in just reading some of my long form stuff.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Sam, again, thank you for your time today. And whenever you're able to announce your super stealthy secret project, we want you back on the show to talk about it, because I know we could have went on with you for a lot longer than the time we had available today. But thank you again so much for your time. And we hope to see you back on the show again really soon.
Right on. Thanks, Hank. Appreciate it.
Pleasure, Sam. Thank you. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. But when we're back, we got more of today's top stories that you're not going to want to miss. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, we're back with more of this morning's bull run. It's 9:21. Bitcoin sitting at 111,600. We're literally the cost of a Nintendo Switch 2 away from new all-time highs, so that's exciting. And a big thanks to Sam Callahan for joining us in the studio today. He's one of the most credible and trusted voices in the space, so make sure to go follow him on X, because you're going to want to hear what he has to say. All right, we got more news, including Donald Trump Jr. He just dropped $4 million into a struggling social media startup with $151 in revenue last year. The company, Thumbs Up Media. The reason? They hold Bitcoin. Thumbs Up lets people shill products on Instagram for pocket change. It lost $2.2 million in Q1 of this year, but that didn't stop it from converting most of its liquid assets into Bitcoin earlier in the year. Now they're holding over $2 million worth of BTC, and Trump Jr. liked what he saw, so he scooped up 350,000 shares in the company, over $4 million worth to be exact, after getting the nod from his investment advisor. He has no operational role, but both he and Eric Trump now serve as advisors to Dominatory Securities, the firm that arranged Thumbs Up's recent $6 million private placement. The plan here? Double down on Bitcoin and add 6 more coins to the mix, because nothing says solid treasury management quite like diversifying into digital assets while hemorrhaging money. The move aligns with the entire Trump orbit going full crypto. Eric Trump's now on the advisory board of MetaPlanet, the Japanese firm with 15,555 Bitcoin and ambitions to hit 210,000 by 2027. Meanwhile, Trump Media, parent company of Truth Social, is going all in. In June, they filed to launch the Truth Social Bitcoin ETF. That's right, a MAGA-branded fund that directly holds Bitcoin. They've also committed $2.5 billion to building their own Bitcoin treasury. At the Bitcoin conference this year, in fact, John Jr. summed it up by saying, "We're seriously on crypto. We're seriously on Bitcoin." Thumbs Up might be a blip on the balance sheet, but symbolically, it's another signal that Bitcoin is the Trump family's preferred financial escape hatch. And while mainstream media is still busy fact-checking their quarterly reports, they're too busy stacking sats to care. And BlackRock's spot Bitcoin ETF, the iShares Bitcoin Trust, otherwise known as IBIT, is now the second biggest holder of Bitcoin on the planet. That's right, IBIT is sitting on over 700,000 Bitcoin. That's over $76 billion in Orange Coin. And yes, they are still buying. The only bigger holder? Satoshi Nakamoto himself, the anonymous creator of Bitcoin who's been ghosting everyone since 2010. Satoshi's stash is estimated at 1.2 million coins, still untouched, still sacred, still giving analysts night sweats. But if IBIT keeps hoovering up Bitcoin at its current pace, 40,000 coins a month, Bloomberg's Eric Balkunas says they'll catch up by May, as in this May. We are officially watching a TradFi juggernaut chase down the mythical founder of crypto. No pressure. Now, this isn't some fluke either. IBIT alone holds more than half of the 1.3 million Bitcoin owned by all U.S. spot ETFs combined. Yeah, one firm, half the pot. Now, for context, Grayscale's 2 funds, GBTC and the Mini Trust, hold 229,000 Bitcoin combined. Fidelity's FBTC, around 204,000. The other 7 ETFs fighting over table scraps. Meanwhile, only 450 new Bitcoin are mined each day. That's it, 450. So when IBIT's slurping up 40,000 a month, do the math, it's supply shock theater. Brought to you by BlackRock. And things, well, they could get even wilder as BlackRock has asked the SEC to allow in-kind redemptions. Right now, ETF investors can only cash out in, cash. But if approved, in-kind redemptions would let investors redeem actual Bitcoin, as in, here's your private key, sir. Good luck out there. According to the SEC Commissioner Hester Pierce, that's generating some serious buzz, because real Bitcoin beats fiat redemption IOUs any day. So what does this all mean for the price, you ask? Well, tightening supply, rising demand, mega institutions going full goblin mode on Bitcoin accumulation, or as crypto analyst Sean Edmondson tweeted, BTC treasury companies keep stacking and total supply keeps falling. Get some, get yours while you still can. It's not financial advice, it's an existential warning. Because if BlackRock's buying 40,000 Bitcoin a month and there's only 20 million to go around, you better pray Satoshi stays asleep. All right, in our next story here, it's going to take me a sec because I got to scroll down from these questions in here. Oh, we're going to take a break actually. But coming up next, the next story, which story is that? I think I went to it, yeah. So coming up next though, guys, we have the 2025 Bitcoin rich list. It's the thing all these people don't want the hackers to know, but we're going to tell you about it right when we come back. Stay put.
Zappobank.com. Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Vivo, breaking news.
Hank, we have some breaking news. Looks like Bitcoin reached an
Oh, do
all-time
tell.
high.
Really? What are we at right now? 100. Oh wow, it touched up over 112,500. New all-time high. Get out your party hats and confetti, baby, because it's time to celebrate. We're all getting Lambos. That's exciting. All right, well, we'll keep everybody up to date on that because we could be breaching new all-time highs every minute for the rest of the show. Yeah, that's right. Total.
Very bullish, yes.
Whew. Very, very bullish. Speaking of bullish, I want to talk about this next story because recently there was a list put together about who owns the most Bitcoin in 2025. And the short answer is everyone you'd expect and one or two that maybe you've never heard of. Now, the usual suspects top the list. We're talking exchanges, ETFs, corporations, and a handful of shadowy whales. Let's start with the exchanges, though, shall we? First, Binance's main cold wallet, the Fort Knox of crypto, holds around 248,000 Bitcoin. It's about $26 billion locked away in a glorified USB stick. Robinhood's next up with around 140,000 Bitcoin, followed by Bitfinex and their 130,000 stash. And then, of course, we have Binance's backup wallet with another 115 Bitcoin because one $12 billion vault clearly just isn't enough. Then there's the Bitfinex hack recovery wallet, which is now government controlled, that has nearly 95,000 Bitcoin, proof that sometimes crime does in fact pay your legal fees. Now on to corporations. Strategy, they're still king, nearly 600,000 Bitcoin on the books. That's like 93% of their entire balance sheet. Or in other words, they run a Bitcoin fund with a side hustle in enterprise software. Tesla, they're still holding around 11,500 Bitcoin. Elon's wallet allegedly is legendary, but who really knows? Block owns around 8,500 Bitcoin. GameStop, 4,700, because nothing says financial stability quite like meme stocks and hard money. Then, of course, there's Metaplanet in Japan, currently around 15,555 Bitcoin, but they got a target of over 210,000 by 2027. Modest goals if I've ever heard of them. The ATF gang is also here. Grayscale's GBTC is around 292,000 Bitcoin. BlackRock's IBIT, 274,000. It launched last year and immediately started gobbling up supply like it was prime rib at a Vegas buffet. Now we have government players involved too, of course. The U.S. holds over 200,000 Bitcoin, all from criminal seizures, now dubbed the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. That's $17 billion worth of orange coin, just collecting dust. China, despite banning crypto, is sitting on almost 194,000 Bitcoin from its 2019 plus token crackdown, because even authoritarian regimes can't quit Satoshi. And El Salvador, bless their hearts, they still got around 6,200 BTC because Bukele, he doesn't fold. Individual whales, well, Satoshi remains the undefeated champ with an untouched 1.1 million count in his own wallet. The Winklevi twins got around 70K, Tim Draper's around 30K, and Michael Saylor personally has over 17,700 Bitcoin because, of course he does. He's also the only CEO who could run a board meeting from a volcano and nobody would flinch. He's that kind of guy. And then there's the one Fee X V6B address that holds 80,000 Bitcoin, frozen, possibly from an early exploit, still a top whale and still very much a mystery. But there is an interesting twist to all this, and it's while the whales are still swimming, the minnows are multiplying. Mid-tier wallets, we're talking wallets that have between 100 and 1,000 Bitcoin, jumped from 3.9 million to almost 4.75 million Bitcoin this year. That, my friends, is what we call real-world adoption. That's small institutions and wealthy individuals quietly becoming Bitcoin's new backbone. So yeah, Bitcoin is still a little top-heavy, but it's getting harder to tell who's hoarding and who's huddling. The price is strong, the players are stronger, and the redistribution of Bitcoin wealth has begun, and it's not going back in the vault. All right, Victor, are we going to break? We got some stuff coming up next, or what do you want to do here?
Treasury Initiative. And
Okay.
a place that's looking to boost our economy with crypto tourism.
Okay, well, excited to talk about those. And we got a new Bitcoin all-time high, 112,600 something or other. It's a day to make memories and to break records. We're all here for it. It's Thursday at the Blockchain Report. We'll be right back. All right, we're back with more breaking news. Bitcoin just eclipsed a new all-time high, and we're going to keep you abreast as these new all-time highs keep rolling in. Currently, new all-time high, $112,738. How much higher will we go today? We'll let you know as soon as that information becomes available. But now let's switch over to camera one for Blockchain Without Borders while we celebrate this new all-time high. And let's hit the stinger, baby. All right. All right, it's time for some Blockchain Without Borders. Let's see what's going out in other parts of the world. A Tokyo-based energy company, well, they've decided that fiat is for peasants. Remix Point CEO Takashi Toshiro will receive his entire salary this year in Bitcoin. Not a portion, not a test run. Now, we'll do it for one paycheck and post about it on LinkedIn. No, this man's whole paycheck, every single yen of it, will be converted into BTC and shipped to his designated wallet. Why? Well, because in Remix Point's own words, they want their CEO in the same boat as the shareholders, which is corporate speak for if the ship sinks, the captain's going down with it, and they're holding sats. Toshiro took over in June and has made it crystal clear that Bitcoin will be the core of Remix Point's financial strategy. That's right, a Japanese energy company is now doubling as a sovereign-level Bitcoin accumulator. And they've been sticking to it also. As of June, Remix Points reported holdings of over 1,051 Bitcoin, 901 ETH, and 13,920 Solana, and 1.2 million XRP, and nearly 3 million in Doge. So they've got a bag. So we'll call it a mixed bag of conviction and chaos, all right? Altogether, that stash is worth more than 116 million bucks, and that's not exactly pocket change. That's a full-blown digital treasury. Now, they're adding their CEO's salary to the Bitcoin column, converting yen to BTC after tax, and sending it straight into his crypto wallet. This isn't symbolic, friends. This is strategic. Remix Point is signaling that they're not playing the fiat game anymore. And for a country like Japan, known for its conservative finance and strict regulations, this kind of move is quite bold. Very bold, in fact. Toshiro also serves under the management of BitPoint, a Japanese crypto exchange affiliated with the SBI Group. Fun fact is the BitPoint also happens to promote the official Trump meme coin. Yay! And yes, the meme coin is aggressively being marketed in Japan. Less yay. But Remix Point isn't the first to go salary in sats. NFL player Russell Okung started this trend back in 2020. Then Argo's blockchain CEO followed suit shortly thereafter. New York City Mayor Eric Adams said he'd take his first 3 paychecks in Bitcoin in 2021, and he's still bragging about it in his 2025 re-election campaign because the price has more than doubled since then. Moral of the story here is leaders who get paid in Bitcoin don't usually seem to regret it, and the ones still taking checks in fiat might want to consider hedging before their salary buys fewer eggs than a meme coin. Remix Point's move is another clear signal that Bitcoin, it's not fringe anymore. It's in the boardroom, it's on the payroll, and it's slowly becoming the standard. We're taking a break, but when we're back, more Blockchain Without Borders. Stay tuned. And we're back with more Blockchain Without Borders. Next up, Sequence Communication, a French semiconductor firm that makes 5G and IoT chips, decided that semiconductors aren't enough. They want hard money too. The company announced it has closed a $384 million debt and equity funding round. They're using every last cent of it to buy more Bitcoin. Sequin's stock jumped 44.8% on the news, which is what happens when you tell Wall Street you're swapping dollars for digital gold in 2025. CEO Georges Karam called the move part of their Bitcoin treasury strategy, saying it would enhance financial resilience and create long-term value. That's finance speak for fiat sucks, we're going orange. The raise included $195 million from selling American depository shares at $1.40 per share. They also issued $189 million in secured convertible debentures due in 2028. Now, if investors convert their warrants, Sequins could grab another $57 million worth, which they also plan to put into Bitcoin. Now, this isn't a half measure here, gang. They're going full sailor, and they're not alone doing it. Sequins plans to partner with Swan Bitcoin for secure treasury execution, and if that name sounds familiar, it should. Swan has become the go-to name for corporate Bitcoin onboarding, quietly turning small-cap tech companies into stealth hodlers. So let's break this down for a second, okay? A French chip maker decided the best way to protect shareholder value wasn't more chips, it was stacking sats. That is not noise. That is signal. And if we're seeing this kind of treasury allocation in France, imagine what happens when bigger players follow suit. Bitcoin isn't a trade anymore, gang. It's a strategy, and it's being deployed globally. Next up, the Kingdom of Bhutan, yes, the one with the monks, mountains, and mandatory happiness metrics, is now trying to kickstart its economy using crypto tourism. Because nothing says gross national happiness like paying for your yak butter tea with Binance Pay. Now, during a panel at Binance's crypto-powered tour of Bhutan, which sounds like a marketing stunt and a yoga retreat had a baby, Bhutan's director of tourism, Damcho Rinzin, explained the move. He said the country's payment infrastructure has been a massive buzzkill for years, with tourists describing bank wire transfers as a thing of the past, which is a very polite way of saying prehistoric. So now, thanks to a new partnership between Binance Pay and DK Bank, travelers can use crypto to pay nearly 1,000 local merchants. That's everything from hotels to momos, all payable in crypto. Rinzin says this sends a message that Bhutan is very welcoming, especially to young tech-savvy, forward-thinking tourists who apparently only travel if they can tap a QR code to buy incense. He says crypto is not just a convenience upgrade, but as a branding move that aligns with Bhutan's sustainable and mindful tourism vision. Or in other words, come for the vibes, stay for the on-chain receipts. The goal here, attract 300,000 crypto-enabled tourists a year. Even if a fraction of Binance's users base would be a windfall for Bhutan's tourism sector, which has taken hits in recent years due to both infrastructure and post-pandemic slowdowns. And the math, well, it kind of checks out. Crypto payments, instant settlement plus lower fees, traditional bank wires equal hope, prayer, and a 3 to 5 business day waiting period. Now, Rinzin even said digital inclusion would benefit more than just tourism. It could modernize Bhutan's broader economy, or at least give it a shot in the arm without needing to build another airport. Bhutan's CMO of tourism, Carissa Nima, echoed the sentiment, calling the country both traditional and authentic, and focused and visionary, which is basically the brand identity of every crypto startup that's also selling incense. She said this move fits neatly into Bhutan's evolving national identity, especially with major projects like Gelefu Mindfulness City underway. Yes, that's its real name. Crypto in this vision isn't a gimmick here. It's a piece of Bhutan's future-facing infrastructure. Of course, there are a few caveats. Local merchants say they haven't seen much crypto action just yet, and one tour guide told reporters that while crypto is neat, visitors should still bring a mix of cash, credit, and coins because Bhutan isn't totally ready for your cold wallet lifestyle just yet. Still, Bhutan accepting crypto for tourism is a flex, a digital upgrade from a kingdom known for analog charm. So if you ever wanted to hike at a monastery, find enlightenment, and pay for it in USDT, Bhutan's ready for you. We're taking a quick break. When we're back, bullish, bearish, we're going to wrap up today and see if things are looking good, bad, or otherwise for Bitcoin. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a sec. Boy, more breaking news, gang. Bitcoin is still reacting to its most recent all-time high. It was 112,700 something or other. Right now, it's 9:52 on this Thursday. Flavor's all about it. Right now, Bitcoin's sitting at around 112,596. We are a mere 100 and math, like $42 away from new all-time highs. This is a big day, something to celebrate. At this rate, I might buy 2 Lambos at the end of the day. Things are looking pretty good. Elsewhere in the crypto market, Ethereum climbed above 2,800 bucks, clearly riding on the coattails of Bitcoin's most recent surge. Vitalik and Mudang are loving it. XRP is up 3% today as a result of this. Cardano is up nearly 2.5%, and Dogecoin getting in on the action, also up about almost 2%, sitting at over 18 cents a pop. So good day to be in the business of Bitcoin, baby. But pretty much all days are, am I right? Well, we need to wrap up today's show with a little bullish, bearish, or BS. So let's head over to camera 1 and do it. Let's go. All right, this is the part of our show, gang, where we talk about our biggest stories of the day and whether or not they mean things are looking good, bad, or otherwise for our beloved orange coin. Let's recap, shall we? First up, we got Bitcoin blasted past the 112K mark today, fueled by $200 million in short liquidations, deep spot buying, and collapsing exchange reserves. It's not a meme rally, it's real capital flow. I mean, new all-time highs on a Thursday morning. How can I not be incredibly bullish about this, right? This is conviction-driven momentum with actual staying power. Shrinking exchange supplies plus rising demand equals a price floor made of tungsten, baby. Shorts got liquidated and the price didn't flinch, and that is what I call bullish. Next up, we have Senate Democrats want to probe El Salvador for its Bitcoin activity. Bukele responded on X by just saying, ha 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 ha, like a bunch of times. He posted this country's Bitcoin address as well, and he just keeps on stacking. He don't care what you or anybody thinks, and I'm bullish on it. I mean, the fact that a sovereign leader is mocking the U.S. sanctions while flexing Bitcoin holdings tells you exactly who has the leverage now, and it ain't DC. More countries will see Bitcoin as a geopolitical insulation. And if mocking US sanctions is bullish, we might be officially in a super cycle here, gang. I'm bullish on that. Too bullish to start. Feeling hot. Next up, the US sanctioned North Koreans as well and Russian nationals for running a fake identity operation to infiltrate tech firms and funnel crypto into missile development. Yikes. I am bearish on this one. I mean, this is the kind of headline that freaks out regulators and justifies overreach. Expect more compliance crackdowns, KYC choke points, and anti-privacy pressures going forward. The optics aren't great, and optics unfortunately matter. Crypto plus North Korea plus missiles equals bearish no matter what way you slice it. Right now, 2 bullish, 1 bearish. Cut it out, North Korea and Russia. Next up, Trump Jr. just poured $4 million into Thumbs Up Media, dude, a company with $151 in revenue and $2 million in Bitcoin, because when in doubt, just buy the treasury. I'm bullish on this. I mean, symbolically, this gang is a megaphone. The Trump orbit is fully orange-pilled, and they're dragging millions of followers and donors with them. Narrative momentum matters, especially in election season. Trump Jr. stacking Bitcoin and microcaps, that, my friends, is political rocket fuel. Therefore, it's bullish. 3 bullish, 1 bearish, 1 more to go. Last up, BlackRock's spot ETF is now the number 2 Bitcoin holder in the world, trailing only the man, myth, and legend, Satoshi himself. They're adding 40,000 Bitcoin a month while only 450 get mined per day. I mean, bullish. Duh. This is the definition of an institutional supply shock. One TradFi titan is cornering the market faster than miners can breathe. IBIT isn't slowing down, it's setting the pace. I mean, when the second biggest Bitcoin holder is BlackRock, how can that be anything other than bullish? So let's recap our score today. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 bullish, 0 BS and 1 bearish, which means the math doesn't lie. This is a strictly bullish day, and I'm standing up to say it because this ain't hopium. This is hard market truth. Bitcoin is pumping, institutions are gobbling it up, and the world is waking up to digital scarcity like never before. As always, gang, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Blockchain Report. Make sure to smash that like button like it owes you sats, and follow RoxomTV and me at Hank at RoxomTV across all platforms in the world. We're here each and every weekday morning at 8 a.m. PST, giving you the most up-to-date Bitcoin info in the business, baby. All-time highs today, a lot to love. So go out there and celebrate. Put your party hats on, your dancing shoes, and have a whirl. You've earned it. Until tomorrow, stay safe, stay sane, and always stay bullish out there, my friends. I will see you Friday to wrap up the week with more Bitcoin Bedlam right here in the Blockchain Report.